Why did Eren do the rumbling? Throughout the final season, Eren's motivations were largely unknown. Even the characters within the story struggle to understand his actions, with the one exception being Reiner. Just before the declaration of war, Eren has a moment of realization. He tells Reiner, "I'm the same as you." But what exactly did he mean by this? The dialogue between Eren and Reiner connects to many central themes throughout the story, but for this specific topic, we'll start midway into their conversation. Eren begins talking about Reiner's perspective, how him and the other warriors were just ignorant children, and everything they were taught was just beaten into them by ignorant adults. You were just a child. What could you have done to fight that? Your environment, your history. After hearing this, Reiner falls apart. That day, when Marcel was eaten, Annie and Bertolt wanted to abort the mission. They tried to turn back, but I convinced them not to. I made them keep going. Yes, I just wanted to survive, but also, I wanted to be a hero. That's why I always acted like everyone's big brother, too. I wanted people to respect me. That wasn't just history or my environment. It was my fault. Your mother was eaten by a titan because of me. What Reiner confesses here ties directly to one of the core themes of Eren's character. Reiner feels an overwhelming amount of guilt over his actions, and he rejects Eren's attempt to explain them. Because deep down, the real reason he destroyed the walls that day was due to his own selfish desire to be seen as a hero. Just a few episodes prior, we learned about Reiner's backstory. His mother passed the burdens of the past onto him, which we've learned through Grisha is one of the worst things a parent can do to their children. He was raised on Marleyan propaganda, and taught to dehumanize the Eldians that lived on the island. So in reality, what Eren says does have merit. Reiner truly didn't know any better. But that doesn't erase the deeper truth that torments him, that his actions were driven by a personal, selfish yearning for recognition. And if it weren't for that, Eren's mother might still be alive. So why does Eren say he's the same? After the rumbling activates, it takes time before we finally hear Eren's inner thoughts and motivations. He thinks about his friends, expressing a desire for them to live long, happy lives. And while his methods are extreme, wiping out the threat of the outside world could be seen as a noble motivation, at least from the perspective of someone on the island. In the very next episode, we learn more. Eren says he's doing it to save the island, to save Eldia. Again, a motivation we can easily sympathize with. But as he breaks down, his words reveal something more. But it's more than that. The reality of life beyond the walls was nothing like the world I'd dreamed about. It was nothing like the world I'd seen in Armin's book. When I learned that humanity had survived beyond the walls, I was so disappointed. Before continuing, we need to talk about Armin's book. When rewatching the series, it's actually surprising how often it's brought up as the origin of Eren's will to fight. At the beginning of the Return to Shiganshina arc, while the scouts are traveling through the forest, Eren grows anxious about their upcoming mission. Armin snaps him out of it and asks Eren where his determination comes from. I had never thought about what was beyond the walls until then. I'd only spent my days looking at the clouds in the sky. But then you came running to me with a book. Both of us were outcasts. We never got along with the other kids in town. That's all we were back then. But it all changed when I heard you telling me those things. And I saw the look in your eyes. You looked like you were having an amazing dream, a dream I couldn't see. That's when I knew for the first time I wasn't free. I realized that I had been living in a birdcage all that time, and that those freakish things had taken my freedom. The world was so big, but they'd forced me into a tiny cage. I knew I could never forgive them. I don't know why, but when I think about getting that freedom back, I can feel it, the strength welling up inside of me. But once Eren reached the basement, he discovered that the world wasn't like Armin's book at all. What existed beyond the walls was just a world full of people. And not only that, there were people who wanted to take away his freedom. So I made a wish. I wished for it to all be wiped away. This is partly why Eren understood Reiner. Yes, they have parallels in the sense that they both invaded the other side, committed, or in Eren's case, will commit terrible atrocities. But it's also because deep down, there exists a selfish motivation that haunts them. I think a problem arises when fans try to go all or nothing with these dynamics. Meaning, I think the noble motivations, like wanting his friends to live long lives and saving the island, are relevant in his mind. He does care about his friends. He absolutely does not want the island to be destroyed. But this inner selfish reason is an extremely strong factor. So much so that he was willing to put his friends in danger for the purpose of it. I don't think Eren would destroy the rest of humanity for the sole purpose of his dream, and for no other reason whatsoever. He specifies the other reasons being important too. And it's true, the outside world is largely a threat to the things he cares about. I think the same goes for Reiner. Although he wants to deny it, it's true that he was raised to believe he was saving the world from the island devils. But he's ashamed of this inner, selfish desire. He wanted to be a hero. That wasn't just history or my environment, it was my fault. Your mother was eaten by a titan because of me. Interestingly, Eren and Reiner aren't the only characters that showcase this concept of human nature. At the end of the Uprising arc, Erwin tells Levi up front that when they uncover the truth within the basement, the truth of their world, he has to be there. It matters more to him than anything, even humanity's victory. He didn't lead the scouts for the purpose of a better future for mankind. He did it to prove his father's theory correct. I was the only one fighting for my own sake. Everyone else had devoted everything they had to fight for humanity. I alone had dreams of my own. Before I knew it, I had subordinates under my command. I spoke words of inspiration to my comrades. I told them to dedicate their hearts to humanity. That's how I fooled my comrades, how I fooled myself, and built this mountain of corpses, on which I now stand. It's the thing he was drunk on all this time. Gabby's character briefly touches on this aspect as well. I've killed a lot of people, so people would praise me. That's the devil in me. He's inside of me too, and you, Kaya, and everyone. There's a devil inside of us all, and that's why the world turned out this way. The ending theme of Season 4 Part 2 might also be referencing this concept. The final verse is, "Behind justice, inside of sacrifice, there's a child of evil inside my heart." So we've covered why Eren understood Reiner. Now we'll talk about how the opposite is also true. When the Alliance sets out to stop the rumbling, Reiner, John, and Connie share a heart-to-heart. The scouts realize they're now in the same position the warriors once were. They betrayed people they cared about. They're all sinners who've committed terrible atrocities. John tells Reiner we're the same, causing him to recall his conversation with Eren. Reiner brings up the possibility that Eren might want to be stopped. It must be painful for him, too. Slaughtering all of humanity isn't something anyone could endure. If it was me, I'd probably want someone else to handle the power of the Founder by now. And if that wasn't possible, I'd want it to be stopped. I want to clarify something about Eren's motivations here. Reiner believes Eren might want to be stopped, but that's not the same as him having planned to be stopped. For those that read the manga, you'll know that Eren's motivations weren't exactly clear, mostly due to a lack of dialogue. Thankfully, in the adaptation, they extended his conversation with Armin. After showing Armin the site of a massacred world, he states up front, "That's 80%. I killed 80% of humanity. I tried to kill all of humanity outside the walls, and you guys stopped me. So that's 80%. With this additional dialogue, it makes things much more clear. Eren's goal was the total destruction of the outside world. It wasn't part of some calculated plan to stop at exactly 80%. He knew his friends would stop him. He knew Mikasa's choice would end the power of the Titans. And he knew he'd managed to destroy enough of humanity to put parity on an equal playing field. But that outcome wasn't something he specifically set out to create. At the beginning of their conversation, Eren talks about how the Alliance will save humanity. They'll be seen as heroes, how he was just following the future he saw before him. But as the conversation goes on, he gradually begins to admit the darker truth. I thought I was doing it for you, but I got Sasha and Hanji killed. I wanted to flatten everything. I wanted to see this sight. And while all of this is true, as Reiner points out, Eren was suffering. Slaughtering all of humanity isn't something a person can just endure. He wanted to be free from the pain of what he was doing. We saw this earlier when he spoke with Ramsay. Eren felt overwhelming guilt even before the rumbling had begun, simply because he knew it was going to happen. As I mentioned in a previous video, Eren spent time among regular people outside the walls. He saw their faces. He shared wholesome moments with families. This experience altered his view of the outside world, and it made his actions all the more unbearable. I want to bring up the concept of a predetermined future. Here's a good place to start when discussing this topic. Eren comes across an alleyway in Marley, and he sees Ramsay being beaten mercilessly by adults. Eren recognizes this exact moment from his memories, and based on what he saw, he thinks he's going to end up saving this child. But he also knows that one day, he'll be killing him via the rumbling. He thinks about how absurd it would be to help someone whose death he's already destined to cause, so he walks away. But in the end, we see that Eren went back. He knew it was illogical, that he was being a massive hypocrite, but he couldn't stop himself. It was simply within his nature to save that child. We can assume Eren had many moments like this off-screen, where things continued to happen, constantly reaffirming the truth that the future he saw will inevitably transpire. So, did everything happen that way because it was predetermined, and Eren's choices never really mattered? Or did things happen this way because of who Eren was, and given his nature and circumstances, he was always bound to make those choices? I think the truth is that it's a little bit of both. Eren had to be the kind of person who would ultimately carry out the rumbling. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been the future he'd seen. As he admits himself, I wanted this. Just like when he saved Ramsay, he saw that future because it was within his nature to go back and save him. If Eren wasn't that type of person, he would never have seen that future to begin with. Because his desire to start the rumbling was so strong, and he had the power to shape even the world's past events on such a massive scale, everything happened the way it did to ultimately lead to that outcome. It's what he desired more than anything. But because he had already seen that future, it created an interesting paradox. He became a slave to it, to his own desire for freedom. No matter what he did, he could never truly feel free, because his actions were always going to lead him toward the outcome he had already witnessed. I think what's clear at this point is that Eren cared about multiple things. He wanted his friends to live long lives, he wanted the island to be safe, and he wanted to witness this empty world beyond the walls. But at the same time, he was experiencing unimaginable guilt and pain for the horrors he unleashed on the world, and wanted an opposing force to stop him. Some of these desires conflicted with each other, and ultimately, I think this makes him a much more interesting and realistic character. In the end, Eren wasn't some heroic, noble savior of Eldia. He was just a person, someone who came across an unimaginable amount of power.